Hi everyone, welcome to this Poverty Reduction Tools for Frontline Staff session. We've got two presentations today. We've got John and Fiona from MRS Making Room, who are going to talk about the support they offer for residents, particularly around hoarding, I think. And then Joe Thorpe is here from the Hackney Council ESOL team to talk about their offer. So I'm going to hand over to John and Fiona. And yeah, thanks very much for coming along.
Well, hi everybody. Thank you for inviting us. I'm Fiona, as you found out. I'll let John introduce himself in a sec. Oh, Christ.
Do you want me to try and share this?
Yes, please. Sorry, I lost you again. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, we've got you.
You've probably heard me swear. Sorry about that. Anyway. I work for a charity called MRS Independent Living. Making Room is one of the projects that we operate. We're based in Hackney, work across, if you think of all of the boroughs that kind of join on to Hackney, we work across all of those boroughs. Making Room is a practical and therapeutic service to support hoarders with their, however you want to call it, de-hoarding, decluttering, removal of, what's the term, John? Extraneous, it's not extraneous things, is it? It's
yeah. Well, you can call it different things. Extraordinary amount of items was
it's the one.
Somebody's preferred definition. Yeah.
So we work in the home. As far as we're aware, we are the only organisation that works in that way within the M25. We haven't come across anybody else. So very briefly, in terms of my role, I manage the service. We were really fortunate to get some funding from the City and Hackney Population Health Hub mental health funding this year, which has enabled us both to pay for some of the service because, well, I'll explain that in a sec, but also to start trying to do some transformation work to make the very disjointed overall service provision for hoarders slightly less disjointed, shall we say, if that's probably the easiest way to put it without getting into too complications. We had a really very pleasing roundtable event this morning where we got a lot of people together to start thinking about how we could do this properly. Charles was there. Not sure if anybody else was there on this. Apologies if you were and I've missed you out. So yeah, so we're looking at how we can make a smoother pathway for individuals who hoard so that they don't have to wait so long, so that the service is better, and essentially, sorry to say it to all of you, but kind of reduce the height of the silos that we all work across so that we can all deliver more effectively. Elephant in the room, yes, we are a service provider, so obviously we have an interest in this, but we also know how serious things are on the ground because we're working with people holding issues all the time. So we know there is huge need out there and it's not really being met. The service is spot purchased, which is a bit of a challenge at the moment because we're not yet financially viable, and hoping that we will be because, don't need to spell out why not. I think that's really all from me, and John can give you the interesting detail about how we work with people and what we do, if that's okay. I'm happy to take questions now or afterwards, whichever people would prefer.
I'm trying to share a few slides, but it doesn't want to do it. It's not that important, really. It's just I could give you a brief sort of overview of how it actually works. So
you can send the slides to me if you want, John, and I can share them.
They're not. There's only a few. Do you want me to do that now? It's not. Maybe it's not that.
You. Well, if you think it's useful, then that's fine. But if not, don't worry.
I'll just talk through them. There's just a few. I think it's because there's a few photographs. It gives you a visual sort of gives you an idea of what we're looking at. But I can tell you what I'm looking at. It's.
Is it okay, John? Send them to you afterwards, and then they.
Yeah, you can have them.
Yeah, of course.
Is that okay?
You're welcome to them. It's just there's only 4 really. I didn't do too many. So people contact us from various places. So it could be adult social care, community groups, mental health services, self-referrals, sometimes family members, things like that. So depending on who it is, if it's say a professional kind of organisation or a sector, we'll ask them to fill in a referral form so we have more details. There's a slightly different version of that for people who are self-funders. It's very short, really, it just makes it easier for people to complete. So once we've received a referral, we'll usually get back in touch with the referrer and ask if they'd like a joint visit, which people don't have to. We can go out on our own, it's fine. But a joint visit sometimes is very useful. So we'll arrange a visit to see the person. Now we talked about this morning. Actually, it doesn't always work out this way. You might need to meet somebody away from the property because they don't want you to go to their home initially. So go for a coffee, have a chat, build some rapport. So it's a lot of what we do is based around relationships and trying to get to know people and find out what their needs are. And I suppose the basis really what it boils down to is to working with as opposed to working on people. There's a few things that might conflict with that. If it's say there's some compliance issues in terms of utilities or checking the gas and electric and things like that, or there's repairs to be done. So there are time constraints on things like that. But once we've met someone, we do an assessment, and we then it's kind of an estimate really, but we base what we do on sessions which are roughly 2 hours. So if we visit somebody, it's a 2-hour session. Sometimes it's a little bit more. Sometimes to begin with, it's a little bit less because it's too much for people. But we try and keep the time. People don't lose it. Before that starts, there's the issue of funding. We have to get things agreed so that the work is funded so that we can go ahead with it. But all that aside, if everything goes to plan, we'll start working with people over a period of time. Some of the things we tend to do is I suppose we work with individuals as well as families. So it could be a number of people in the property. It could be siblings. It could be whole families from children up to mother, father, carers, grandparents. It could be. It's a very wide range of people, and we base what we do on the clutter rating scale, which I'm assuming you probably know already. If not, it's easy to look up. It's just a very simple way of measuring where people are at visually, I suppose, but also when you're talking sort of informally with other people, you can say, oh, this person, they're at a level 7. So a level 7 to a 9 would usually trigger a safeguarding alert, which we if it's not done already, we would then submit one. And just to give you an idea, trying to think. So the guy, it could 7 to a 9 could be that you can barely get into the room. There is nowhere to really put anything. There's no bed to sleep on. If it was a bedroom, the stuff is probably head height or more. Same goes with some. It's a shame. I will send you this afterwards. It's quite useful because it gives you a better idea when you're looking at it. So we base it on that, and also we look at what's realistic. What's a realistic goal? So if something's a 7 or a 9 and the person has nowhere to sleep and they're just sleeping on top of everything, if we can reduce that to a 4 or 5 and get the bed cleared and it's safe, we look at safety is really the main key, the key to it all. Then we would consider that to be a success, really. I suppose some of the things that are a little bit more tricky is working in partnership, which seemed to come up this morning. But things we think people working together, we're part of a larger picture, really. Yeah, I mean, if there's any, please ask questions if you've got any. I'm happy to take questions.
I mean, to kind of add in just one final thing from what John was saying, as I said, we are spot purchased, and one of the key challenges for us is it can take a really significant amount of time once we've submitted an estimate for funding to be agreed. And significant, I mean, we might not hear anything for 6 months. Now, obviously, mostly in terms of the individual service user, that is really difficult because whoever referred them has worked with them possibly to get to a stage where they are happy to consider talking with us and working with us. And then we go in, we do the assessment, and then it's, oh yeah, I've got to wait for 6 months. So it is a challenge, and it impacts most on the service user, which seems slightly unfair. Sorry, John, I thought I should just add that.
No, it's fine. There's a couple of hands up, I think. Any questions there?
I think you were first, Genevieve.
Genevieve?
Oh, thank you, John. Thank you, John and Fiona. That was my question. My first question, if you don't mind, I have two, was regarding the funding. So when you've got to wait, who are you waiting to hear from?
It could be anybody. It could be the vast majority of our referrals are from housing of whatever ilk, adult social care, and mental health from whatever ilk. Housing, we might not wait as long because often housing contact us when things are, as John alluded to, they need to do the safety checks, and obviously that's a key issue if people can't get in, or that the individual is significantly down the road to eviction because of their hoarding behaviours. So sometimes that funding comes through more quickly, but predominantly it is the statutory services, so ASC and mental health.
And what is a typical expense? Say you've got that rating of 7 to 9. What does that involve? How much is that typically, or does it vary that much?
We have different charge for statutory and for self-funders. So the statutory costs help support the self-funders because we don't break even on that, but we feel we'd like to offer the service to people who wouldn't be able or don't want to access statutory type funding. Cost per session statutory which is 2 hours, is 250 plus VAT, and our average number, I mean, it's really hard to say average, but we are probably about 50% of the overall cost of a blitz clean. And we would argue, and I think some who here would also agree, that we are probably more effective than the blitz clean.
Well, that's what I've heard so many things about blitz cleans. How do you support the customer after that's happened? Because I understand that can be done, but then they fall back into old ways and patterns, and it happens all over again.
John?
Yeah, there is that. I mean, it would be interesting, just from this morning's meeting we had, I was talking to someone from hygiene services where they do exactly that. They do the blitz clean. So we were saying how it would be interesting to have a closer link with other people. It doesn't always pan out that somebody has a blitz clean and then we're contacted in order to sort of minimize and reduce the property going back to the way it was, if you like. Although having said that, I've been working over the last couple of weeks with somebody new in order to do just that. They've been out of their property for 18 months while it was cleared, and part of my role is to, I suppose, I mean, I can't stop this. My job's not to stop. I'm not there to stop it, but to ask questions and keep the property in a condition which is habitable, I suppose, and also meets the needs of the housing association, because I suppose in a way, this in particular person, it's their last chance, really. But overall, I suppose once we're contacted and we start working with someone, we do that over a period of time, and it varies from person to person. You might meet someone and they'll say, oh, I've had enough of all this stuff. I'm quite happy to get rid of lots of it in one go. So you're taking stuff away in bulk, which is fantastic, really. But then other people might want to go through that with a fine tooth comb, and you'll be looking at every individual item or whatever it might be. It could be an empty biscuit box or it could be anything. It could be anything, but it's not so much. It's how people see it, and part of our job is to ask a few questions once we get to know people and try and understand where that might be coming from. Although we don't tend to go too far into that, if I'm honest, because the limitations of it. We're not therapists, and you heard this morning, Charles. But when working with one person, she was quite right, really, to say that we work mainly in the present. So we could talk about trauma, and we could talk about all sorts of things for two or 3 hours. But at the end of those 2 or 3 hours, you've still got a pile of stuff in your home, and it's not made. That's still going to be there. So we walk and talk really once we start to work with someone, and generally that generally works. And then over time, people see their spaces change, and then the way they feel about the space and their emotional attachment to items, and also the rooms that they start to see things differently. And that's a common thread. People start to see things differently, and they want to rearrange their rooms and buy different furniture and replace things. And so they start to see it like the home it was, it once was.
That's really brilliant. I'm sorry, Charlie, I know you're waiting, but I had one more question, if you don't mind. Is are you able to take advantage of volunteers, people with lived experience? Or
yeah, we've looked at that. I think I mean, Fiona probably agree. I think that would be great. At the moment, we're quite a small. We say, the team. We're
a service, but
just to be clear, we're a very small team. There's me and my colleague Sumbi who do the face-to-face work. So there's only 2 of us for Hackney. To set up a volunteer sort of role or coordinator, or I think that would be great. And then we could have a team of people. But I think they needed, especially with volunteers, they need to be supported, trained. There needs to be a role that is quite a specialist or a specific role, which we could do, but we'd need more time. And we're all part-time, really. We're all 3 days a week.
We would really want to. I mean, there are a number of issues. One, how long the service can carry on being funded through the charity as opposed to being self-sufficient. Maybe another year if we're lucky, unless things change. I mean, if things build up, that's fine. So we don't want to do too much at the moment because we might let people down. We're looking at potentially starting up a couple of support groups, but more based around confidence, because other people have had similar issues, but more around trying to reduce social isolation and start introducing people back into their communities. And that, I think, would be a really good point. We've got somebody that we have worked with, that John's worked with, who we are hoping might help support one of those. So in the long run, absolutely, as it stands, we just don't have the capacity to be able to manage volunteers effectively and properly.
Yeah.
Thanks for your questions, Genevieve and John and Fiona. Charlie, did you want to come in?
Yes, please. Hi, Fiona and John. Sorry you see me again so soon. I guess I had a question, because as frontline officers, when you encounter someone who hoards, often you are referring them to an internal system like a tenancy sustainment service or a safeguarding officer or mental health services. So you as the frontline officer might not have a huge understanding of hoarding, because you're kind of offloading that to another part of the system. What are 2 things that all frontline officers you think should really know about people who hoard and the struggles they face, or how they can approach that most sympathetically?
John, do you want to take that first?
No.
You're the expert.
I think the idea of working with someone and being kind and human towards people, and not making these. I mean, the person this morning who came to talk about her lived experience is not feel like she's being judged. And I think the language you use is quite important. I thought that was interesting. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm mentioning this morning and nobody knows what that is. It's a mystery. But saying, what you're going to do with all these books, you're never going to have time to read them all, which was interpreted by the person as, you think I'm getting old now, I'm going to die. And we've all got books we haven't read. I've got a massive library at home and I've only read half of them, but that's the point. I don't want books I've already read. I want books I've not read. But it's just being aware of what you're saying. And most people are fine, they get it. But I think it's the idea that, what do you want with all this stuff? And the stuff is a symptom. It's looking beyond that and trying to understand and show some. I mean, compassion is in short supply maybe, but some empathy, some compassion, just and being interested in the person. I mean, that tends to be the way we approach it. I'm interested in you as a human being. We'll get to the stuff. I mean, I remember the one woman I worked with. I think I saw her 3 times outside the home before she allowed me to go to her flat to have a look at it and talk about what we were going to do. And I think the first 2 times we didn't mention her flat or hoarding or any. I didn't mention it. I deliberately didn't talk about it at all. And then the 3rd time we met, she said, "Okay, should we talk about my flat?" So you're just asking. You're inviting people. It's time. Give some space and time to people. But physically, really, in terms of their home, but also mentally, just allow people to. It's this professional sort of we must act and do something now, which is always pressing, but it's quite important to think about, who's really going to benefit from that. I don't know. It is a toss up. It's very difficult to make that judgment, but I think being kind really is what it boils down to.
I've done a few quick things. One, I really emphasize what John says, don't judge. 2, don't assume that because you have some experience in X that you know how to work with individuals who hoard, and what that implies if you start kind of trying to work with them. And 2 and 3, sorry, that's 3. We are happy to do this, but it's around acknowledging hoarding is an issue, and what hoarding you'll see when the other John sends the slides around. See, it's not the sanitized version you see on TV. It is often very different. And acknowledge that this is an expert thing, and maybe you need, and I'm not saying it should be us. What I'm saying is, say for a housing officer, it's referring on to maybe adult social care if it is above the 7, because it's a safeguarding issue anyway, as John says. So it's about trying to get away from the I know everything, sort of acknowledging that yes, this person's got an issue. I don't. Blah, blah, blah. Sorry, John.
No, just I'm a big fan of R.D. Laing. I just think that, and he says something around that the way we treat each other is the therapy, and that sort of, to me, that sums up what we do. But we do acknowledge there are external pressures from other organisations that really do need things done within a certain time frame. But it's how you approach that and keep the person at the centre of it. I mean, we talk about person-centred and trauma-informed, and you can call it all sorts of things. And over time, the words change and the language change. But it's trying to practice that, really, and it does seem to work. I mean, that's my experience anyway. Yeah. It does seem to work. But yeah, and measuring success as well. People's homes they don't have to be perfect, as long as they're safe. And if you get the gas
3, which you might think, well, that's not great. But if it was a 7 or an 8 beforehand, and it's gone down to a 3, and the individual is safe and there's no fire risk.
Yeah, no fire risk. You can get rid of any pests.
Yeah.
People are safe. The trip falls, any hazards, if people are elderly or their mobility isn't great or whatever it might be, if they can move around freely in their home, have somewhere to sit, read a book, watch the telly, have a bed to sleep. It's just the basics, really. And there's some sort of baselines that we've been talking about recently about things, should we accept everything or should we press a little further? So things like food, for example, we say we work with, and now I'm going to contradict myself, but not allowing food to be on the floor or just in bags that should be refrigerated. It's like, I can't leave here knowing that's on the floor, and it's really showing that you care. Really, you could just say, whatever, it's not my problem, or that's their choice. But really, I can't walk away thinking I've just left that home and there's all food all over the floor, which they're going to eat this evening for their dinner. This is
and it's probably a week old and it's been on the floor for the entire time.
We're not going to do that. The guy I saw a couple of weeks ago had a bag of sausages that was sitting in a black bag for 4 or 5 days, and he was eating them. It's like, no, person-centered. Yeah, we'll work together. Forget that. No, that just being a human being, one to another, one person to another, that's not happening. And we go through, but you have to approach it in a sort of way. But I'm generally quite I don't sort of give up on sort of things like that. And I think people generally know they agree with you. It's just that there's other things going on for them. There's other reasons. It's not that it's a symptom of something else. There's other things happening. And if you can start to unravel that a little bit, then you know, the more I learn about somebody's needs, the more I can kind of meet them, I suppose. But yeah.
Thanks, John.
Sorry, that was a big answer, wasn't it?
No, that's brilliant. It's really good to hear about the sort of how you work as well as what you actually do, and you know, that relational approach and building the trust is really interesting to hear about. Martin, you've been waiting patiently, so I'm going to bring you in.
Yeah, thanks, John and Fiona. I'm just wondering what happens in an instance where a hoarder has been referred to you by a neighbour or a family member, but the hoarder themselves doesn't acknowledge that they have a problem and refuses the service. Is there anything that can be done in that circumstance, or?
Yeah, it's very tricky. I mean, it does happen. Some perseverance sometimes. That it's very rare, actually. It doesn't happen very often. Not since I've been working for MRS and Sunby, and you know, people will engage to some extent, but it might just be not the right time. So we kind of put people on hold, and we try and keep our hand in, and it is a very tricky situation. If we can get to the point where somebody will meet us and talk to us, then you have an opportunity then to create some sort of dialogue or something. You know, that's the key to it, isn't it? It's just trying to trying to encourage people to talk to you, really. And some of that is not always, but there is a fear. It's hopes and fears we're dealing with. We hope that people will change, and then the fear is that people want to change and they don't want to change, and it's just, it all gets sort of convoluted, and it's all just very difficult for people to. But I think it's the fear, the first step, and especially if you're not, because it's on the referral form we do have a question: has this person agreed to be, agreed to this referral? And quite often it says it's ticked no, but we still contact them because they're often aware that something is happening. It's usually not out of the blue, but I'm trying to think of someone who it has been out of the blue, but I can't think of anyone. They are aware.
They used to more, didn't they? I mean, we've tried really hard. I've been managing the service now for about 18 months, and over that, and John joined about 2 months ago. We've been trying really, really hard to get to that stage where, as I'm sure you won't be surprised, and as John's alluding to, if somebody won't acknowledge that they do have an issue with hoarding behaviour, the way that we work with them is not necessarily going to work unless we can break that barrier down. So we are really clear on our referral. Has the individual been talked to? We will still talk to them, but we're not going, because it's not going to work. We're not going to force the service on them if they really don't want it. As John said, if it's not the right time, or there's other stuff going on in their lives, because there is no point. They have to be in the right place and acknowledging that they do want to change something. Is that fair?
Yeah. There has to be some movement. I mean, it has happened. I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh yeah, everybody engages." There have been a few that we just can't reach. But we keep in touch with the referrer, and we leave it open, and we say if it changes in the future, let us know. And it's sort of, we don't just, it's closed in one sense, but if anything changes, we're happy to then pick it back up again. But yeah, it's very tricky. It can be tricky. But it depends. If you can get to talk to somebody, then it's generally you're taking, it's a risk. It's a chance that you have to take a chance. Yeah.
Sorry, John D. We are talking a lot.
No, not at all. This is great. This is what this space is for. Genevieve, did you want to come in?
Thank you. I just wondered if you had ever applied for or are aware of the grant funding that's made available by Hackney that comes out, I don't know, twice a year maybe. I forget how often it comes out. But hopefully, if that's something that you're interested in, please check our website for the grant funding.
We will.
Usually, it's got some specific areas that it wants you to meet in applying for those funds. But,
One of the issues we've had, sort of, can I say strategically without sounding pompous, is that until quite recently, hoarding was not seen as something that needed grant funding for. That's a very shorthand way of saying it. So it's been quite difficult. And also we've tried, because we'd quite like, you know, we're a CIC as well as a charity, we'd quite like to have some, can I say money making without sounding like a Tory? Sorry, but money making activities. So yes, I think we are probably going down the acknowledgement that it might take longer to build it up. So we might be going for grant funding. We have had money from we have, as an organisation, we've had money from Hackney in the past, which is great for some of our projects. And we would never not consider something if we felt we fit the criteria. But it's difficult because hoarding as a issue doesn't necessarily. But thank you, Genevieve. I mean, we will keep an eye out.
Yeah.
And in terms of referrals, then you've mentioned obviously you take them from statutory services, but also some other partner organisations. Can anyone refer in, or you sort of, because of the funding issues, are you sort of limited to certain pathways in, or can anyone sort of get in touch with you guys?
Anyone can fund. Anyone can talk to us.
Yeah.
Anyone, referrals are on, there are two for referrals on the website. One is for potential self-funders, one is for, we call it statutory funding, but one is for anything other than, actually we should probably change the title, for anything other than self-funders. And yes, because as Sean's alluded to, we're a very small team. I can't think what the right word is, sorry, it's been a long day. It's the referrer's responsibility to try to access funding. I mean, that's the key thing, and can make it quite difficult. We will help support, you know, we have supported, not community, it wasn't community connectors, in terms of maybe accessing small pots of money that are available from charities around the borough that kind of will make up the funding completely. So we're not going to say no, but much as we would love to be able to spend certainly more time than we've got to try to access it, it's just, we just don't have the capacity.
Yeah, so it's a very small team. Yeah.
But
anyone can refer, and the assessment is, there's no cost to that. We'll go out and assess everybody, and sometimes that's very useful for people because we can come back and give you an estimate and give you some. People want the assessment because it helps them then create a better argument or a case towards funding. So sometimes that's very useful.
Yeah. And are those referral routes on the slides, John? If not,
I can do that. Okay, I'll do that. I'll add a bit more.
So people have got the info when it goes out the newsletter. That'd be really helpful.
Okay.
I'm going to go to Genevieve, and then unless anyone else has got any other questions, we might have to wrap up this section of the meeting to allow Jo her time to present. Genevieve, you want to come in?
Thank you. Just the quick question is, you accept referrals only from Hackney residents? You accept from outside Hackney? Is it Pan London?
Right, that's a complicated question. Sorry, John D. Our constitution allows us to work within Hackney and with neighbouring boroughs. So if you think of Hackney as the centre all around, we are looking at potentially changing that slightly and maybe being offering training to some people, because we've had contact from recently Winchester, Derby and Swindon. So there's obviously a need out there. So we're looking at maybe being able to develop a training offer, but in terms of actually directly working with individuals, it's really those ones that surround Hackney, unfortunately. It'd be great to change, it'd be great if we had a bigger team, but you know, maybe in the future, if you know, it carries on.
Great, thanks guys. If no one else has got any other questions, we'll leave it there. But thanks so much for coming along, John and Fiona.
Thanks for having us.
Sort out a few slides.
Not at all.
I'll add to the ones I've got, so it's clear what you might need to do if you want to refer. And no problem.
Perfect. And feel free to obviously continue coming to this space and making connections with people here. So you're very welcome to attend when you can. We are going to pass on to Jo Thorpe, who's come here from the Hackney Council ESOL team. Jo, I can't see you on the call, but I think we've still got you. Do you want to come in?
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you see me now? Have I popped into the screens?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I don't know how to follow that actually, but I'll do my best. So I've come here to talk about ESOL, the ESOL that Hackney Council provides. So I'll try not to use too much jargon, but you know what it's like. So this is English for speakers of languages other than English. Can you see my slide?
Yeah, we've got it.
Brilliant. Okay. And we're also not a huge provider, but we do work with other providers in the borough to try and give overall coverage. So I thought what I'd do is just tell you a little bit about what we do and then allow a space for questions. Sure. What we offer are exam classes, because what our aim is to try and help residents improve their opportunities in life. So whether they're trying to get better paid or into employment, or just try and support their children or be more integrated in the community. There's so many different reasons to come into an ESOL class. So we try and provide something which fits for most of different needs. The classes are only 4 hours a week. Other providers in the borough do an awful lot more. The borough, for example, the Hackney the college, New City College, their provision is 9 hours a week. So we are small, but we do all levels, from complete beginners, so people who just arrived, and also we have a class for maybe residents who've been here quite a long time but have never learned to read and write, possibly in their own language, because their childhood was ravaged by war, so they never went to school. So we have classes for lots of different types of learners. We are working very closely with the college now, so that we're helping learners move from our small provision into large provision, where they can also access more vocational training. And also, we've got some little classes that we're starting this year, which is Help with Grammar, Speak Confidently. These are classes which are only 2 hours a week, so they might be suitable for people who are carers. Maybe they're working and they can't commit to even 4 hours a week. So there's quite a lot of different provision there. We also have a group with all the other providers in the borough, and we signpost learners on to the most suitable provision for them. Which is where our classes are. I thought I'd do a spot quiz here. If you can guess what the centres are, so that where it says, you probably look, oh, everybody's looking on tiny little screens. Where it says ESOL class, we're running a class next year. So if you want to just make guesses about where we are, that'd be lovely. Any guesses?
Is one of them the Dalston Library, maybe?
Good guess, but no.
No.
We do have other adult provision at Dalston Library, but not ESOL.
Charlie reckons Clapton Library, is that one?
No, sorry. Right, I'll tell you. We're in children's centres, primary schools, and some community provision. So we try to be across the borough. So out in the east, we've got the Kingsmead Cabin, which is the Hackney Marsh Partnership. We're running classes there, and also Clapton Park Children's Centre. In the north, we got a class at Stoke Newington School and one at what's that place up there, Hillside Children's Centre. In the south, we've got Whitmore Community Centre. So we try to spread ourselves around. We try to put levels in different places as well, so learners who are more reluctant to travel can find a class near them. This year, because of the changes in the children's centres and kind of limits there, we've only got 2 classes with creches. So this is the next year coming up I'm talking about now. So we have very, very limited creche spaces. So if you have any idea of places that already run a creche that would like an ESOL class, please get in contact with us, because we may be able to help. The classes are free to all eligible residents. This can be complicated, but basically, if they live in Hackney and they've got an NI number, we can usually take them for free. If they're earning a huge amount of money, then we often can't take them, because we don't, our pot of money is aimed at the poorest in the borough. So they have to be over 19, UK national, or with a right to abode, EEA nationals within the it's really complicated. Refugees and asylum seekers, there isn't any problem at all, but it can be complicated. So if you're working with newly arrived asylum seekers or refugees, then please contact us and we'll be able to clarify whether they're able to come. Sometimes people come to us with no recourse to public funds on their cards, on their biometric cards. We can take them. That does not apply to education. No access to public funds refers to other things, but often people are reluctant to send those learners to us because they think they're not going to take them. We will. So please send them on. So we are trying to get learners into our provision and out the other side. So we're trying to get them to either move up a level, go into employment, onto another sort of course, or onto a different type of course. So it's always about trying to move learners through our provision and on with their lives. So we don't encourage learners to sit in the same class for too many years running, but we do have a couple who do that. And this is the contact details. John already has these, and you'll circulate these, won't you? So this is the how you get in touch with us for the AIG, the Information Advice and Guidance team. They are non-partial. Is that right? Impartial? I can't remember which one it is, which I should really know because I am a language teacher, but it is the end of the academic year. They will send people to the right provision, whether it's ours or whether it's somebody else's. So if they think it's more appropriate for the learner to study with Action for English, then they will send them there rather than just hoard them for our own needs. And then we'll have to get the anti-hoarding team to come get rid of some of the learners. We also, as part of the adult learning service, that's interesting. English, maths, ICT, vocational courses, Make Look Pretty, which is an instruction to myself to do something about that slide, and a careers advice service. So we do other things as well as ESOL. That's it.
Amazing, thanks, Joe. Does anyone have any questions for Joe? I had one or two, but Charlie, do you want to come in?
I was curious, Joe, if you work with Connecting All Communities, who are also based at the Whitmore Centre occasionally. They're a food bank, but they're run by a woman called Shukri, who is a fantastic advocate for translation services in Hackney and the need for Hackney services to be done in different languages, but also I'm sure would be a great person to engage with about getting your services working together. I'm very happy to put you in touch if you're not already working together.
Yeah, we're not at the moment. I do go to the Whitmore Centre community users group, but there was nobody there apart from me the other day, so I haven't had a chance to meet anybody. But yes, if you could, that'd be great, Charles. Thank you.
Absolutely, will do.
Nice one, thanks, Charlie. Genevieve.
Thank you, Passon. I always love to hear about ESOL classes. I'm just curious, how many students do you typically get in a class?
We take up to about 12. It depends on the size of the venue. We've got some venues that are smaller, so we tend to put literacy classes where learners have low level literacy in those classes, so they can get more individual attention. 12 is the max.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thanks, Joe and Genevieve. I was going to ask around, it was a similar question really to Charlie's question. You probably are, but are you connected to the Refugee, Migrants and Asylum Seeker service at Hackney, what's now the Welcome Hackney team, Eden's team, because they obviously are doing lots of the direct outreach to the asylum hotels. So I was just wondering if you were sort of connected in with that team and were able to support anyone in those hotels.
Yeah, because the IAG team, I think, were invited to take part in their activities, but we're struggling for capacity at the moment, which is a typical thing really in our area. But yes, we are aware of them and we do want to work more closely with them in the future. Yeah. I know that the college are working with the hostels, so they are doing some outreach work.
Great, sounds good. Does anyone else have any questions for Joe? Charlie?
This is more of a request, Joe. Could you send me a list of the places where you're operating? I have a map that I keep a track of things, so it's helpful to know if someone gets in touch with that kind of ask, if I can link them up with you in the future, just so I can have a sense of where things are.
Yep. Yeah. What we have to be quite careful about, though, is giving learners the impression that they can study in the centre closer to their house, because that might not be the most appropriate class for them. So if they're becoming a beginner and the class at Linden is level 1, which is the highest class we do, then we won't be able to send them to Linden. We'll have to send them to an appropriate class. But I will very happily send you the venues.
That would be helpful, Joe. I was thinking more about linking in with other local organisations who might want him to be linking in with you about resident accessing those services, but might not know that you're operating in the same building or next door, because there are always those sorts of opportunities, and there's so much going on in Hackney, but it's very hard to know everything that's going on, particularly even next door to you. But that would be great.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you.
Great stuff. Any other questions for Joe? No. Okay. Thanks so much for coming along, Joe. And yeah, I've got your slides, so I'll circulate them out in the newsletter. But that was great. Thank you so much.
What I'll do is I'll remove that instruction to myself, and I'll send you a new copy.
Perfect. Okay, fantastic. Right. Well, those are our two presentations, two great presentations. So we're going to just sort of open up the meeting now. So we usually just have this sort of last half an hour or so just as an open space. Anyone who's got anything they want to share, ask a question about, obviously you have a really great range of skills and experience and insights on this call as always. So if there's anything you've got a sort of burning question about, something you're not sure about in supporting a group of residents, then now's your chance to put it out there, or to share a positive news story or promote something you want to spread the word about. Now's your chance. Just to say also, if there's not to sort of share anything that might identify a resident, but yeah, don't usually have that anyway. But yeah, feel free to come in, anyone who wants to share anything.
Yes.
I think we've got Titilayo with a hand up. I heard another voice, but I wasn't sure who it was.
It was me.
Okay. Roland, do you want to go in first, and then we'll come to you, Titilayo?
Okay. Yes. I haven't been to a few of the recent events. It's only because the Money Hub team have started doing outreach that kind of prevents me from joining in. But today I just had to. I had to because I've met a few people and they're presenting requests, which I think I would find solutions by attending this. I recently met with a resident who presents a range of issues, hoarding, wanting assistance with garden waste disposal and all that. That I thought, well, I know where to go to. So I've arranged to meet her in 2 weeks' time. And I'm hoping that I will get the resource that I need from attending this time around. So my apologies for missing a few of the sessions, but I think there's a great resource in this, an opportunity from attending and learning, getting information. Thank you so much for what you're doing, Jenny and John, just to say thank you.
Oh, no worries at all. Thanks for coming along, and I'm glad to feel that this is a useful space.
Yes.
I think in terms of you mentioned that the sort of resident had issues with hoarding. I think, unfortunately, John and Fiona from MRS might have had to jump off the call, so they're actually not here to take that question. But I'll be able to, I can certainly put you in touch with John and Fiona, and I'm sure they'll be able to give you some advice or help in a more direct way. I don't know if anyone else had anything they wanted to say in response to Roland. Was it issues around hoarding, and was it?
Yes. They presented as being having difficulty with managing what they have at home, and I said, okay, I'll investigate and get back to them. And I had a few of what Fiona and John were kind of explaining. So I intend to tap into that resource before I meet the client in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
What I'd say, Roland, sorry, John.
Well,
what
no,
I'd say, Roland, as well, is it's probably worth idea of looking at the tenure of the person. If they have a landlord, who that landlord is it a social landlord? Because they might be able to leverage funds to, say, procure making room. If they are own their own home, it might be more complicated, but generally, I think one of your first questions, which I'm sure you've already thought of, is how are they housed who is that? And then that might be a place to start with both those queries.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Roland, that in relation to what you shared, I've sort of immediately thought how difficult it must feel when you're having that conversation with a resident and it's not just one or two or three, you know, there's so many things. And how do you decide which is the most important thing to follow up on if you're working with someone who's quite overwhelmed? And those decisions can be quite difficult, I think, in the moment, can't they, when everything seems really overwhelming. I just wondered whether you have any reflections on how you decide what to prioritize when you are working with someone who's clearly got lots going on and needs lots of different help that might come from. How do you manage that? Because obviously we don't want to just refer everybody on, or that might be too much for them. How do you decide what to do first? I just was interested in your process. But
yes, when I met them because I was helping with claiming a disability benefit. And I thought that was the priority, getting them to, kind of get their attendance allowance sorted. Once that is sorted, and then it was more of getting that out of the way and win their confidence. Because when I do that, I'll be able to leverage on that and assist them in other areas. So we've done the attendance allowance form, sent it off to DWP Wolverhampton. So I'm going to meet with them again and then start to address the other issues, the debt, the hoarding, and maybe get information about garden waste disposal. And so I've kind of prioritized the disability benefit first. Yes.
Yeah. So you can get some
kind of maximize their income.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like good advice from Charlie in terms of the tenure, because sometimes when it comes to housing as well, it's the order of things. Sometimes she says, "Oh, you should have done that before you did that," or you should.
Yeah, she's a council tenant, and I know how to connect with the neighborhood office, and
yeah. Oh well, good luck.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You're another one of the very knowledgeable people that we're always grateful to have here. Sorry to keep you waiting, Titilayo. Oh, Charlie.
Sorry, Roland, just quickly, if that's the case, tenancy sustainment is the person you should speak to about quite a few of those things. If you don't know that service, I can link you up.
Okay, thank you.
Nice one, thanks, Charlie. And Roland, I've just quickly emailed Fiona and John and CC'd you in. So hopefully you'll be able to get some advice from them on the hoarding issue.
Okay, thank you.
Titilayo, did you want to come in?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone.